So, welcome everyone this evening. Um, Reminding ourselves that our mission in a season of love is to practice becoming love in and for 2025 and beyond, hopefully for the rest of our lives, and to possibly make an experiment of how the world might become a different place, how it might appear different to us, and how we might appear different to it if we are in love. So, taking our poem fragment, in troubled times, it takes great concentration to align ourselves with grace rather than force, with love rather than fear. We begin by allowing ourselves to be loved along with all the rest of creation. And then we fall into that love. So last week we looked at how our ego is made up of all of our past experiences, which eventually become our beliefs and opinions. And recognizing that our thoughts are created from this foundation of our beliefs and opinions. And we may have our beliefs based on very good evidence, but ultimately everything we think is based on some sort of belief. And we tend to call these beliefs and things facts. We call it truth, we call it reality, as though there is truly one unimpeachable truth or reality. But in reality, it is actually a belief built upon belief, built upon belief, built upon belief. We can't even track all the way back where our beliefs began. But we eventually arrive here to this moment with a certain set of beliefs. So that's what we talked about last time. And we're picking up there with the question, well, why is Rebecca hammering on this? The reason is because everyone out there in the world that we disagree with, whether it be about what kind of car we should drive, or how we should keep our house and yard, um, or what it's okay to wear to the grocery store, whether or not there is a God, or what we should do about the issues of homelessness and immigration, to recognize that everyone developed their beliefs out of their own experiences. So our hard and fast belief, no matter what side that we are on, is that we, air quotes, are right and they are wrong. And that is what creates the separation from one another that we're experiencing now. So recently, my friend Nico, who's also the pastor at the church that I attend, suggested, well, this was last weekend, suggested that if we didn't read one other thing this week, that we read a sermon preached by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on March 31st, 1968, which was just 4 days before he would be assassinated on a balcony in Memphis, Tennessee. Mark and I actually visited that balcony once and were able to stand just a few feet away from where Dr. King lay dying. And it was one of the most profound and moving moments of my life. So just 4 days before that, Dr. King delivered this sermon called Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution. Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution. And if you look that up, the sermon is full of quotes from Dr. King that you will recognize. But one quote is, "We must face the fact that at 11 a.m. on Sunday morning, when we stand to sing, 'In Christ there is no East and West,' we stand in the most segregated hour of America." And in 1968, the segregation that he was talking about was, of course, racial. The definition of segregation is to separate or set apart from others, isolate, or to cause or force separation of, as from the rest of society. So we recognize that now we segregate not so much between races or even religions. The big segregation is between right and left. Probably the greatest hour of segregation now is news hour, where we tend to get our information or news, where we look for facts. So no matter which side of things we fall upon, we look across this divide and we point at the person on the other side and say or think, "You are wrong. You are the problem." The people on the left look across and point at the right and say, "You are the problem." And the people on the right look across at the people on the left and say, "You are the problem." But wait, you may be thinking, well, they are wrong. They are the problem. So let me ask you this. What exactly is the problem? What, in your opinion, is wrong in the world? To which you might reply, well, do you have about 10 hours for me to list to you all of the problems in the world? But I want you to think about it for just a few seconds here while I take a pause. What is really with the world? I, of course, don't know for sure. Um, but I'm going to say a what if. What if the only real problems are that we don't believe, we don't know in our deepest being that we belong to one another? What if we don't know that we are in love with one another, that we are loved and that all creatures are loved, all beings? What if part of the problem, or one of the problems, is that we, whoever we are, think or are very sure that we are right? And if this is true for pretty much everyone, these three things really would be the root of all of our problems. We don't believe that we belong to one another. We don't know that we are in love. And we are very sure we are right. Name a problem to me that wouldn't be fixed if we truly believed that we belong to one another and to all of creation. Would we ever hoard more than we needed? or isolate ourselves from one another's needs. If we were all walking around knowing and trusting in love all the time, how could any of our problems, war, economic inequality, drug and alcohol addictions, crime, mental health crises, racism, oppression in all its forms, how could that even exist? Here's another quote from Dr. King. And this, never forget that this was spoken many, many years ago, and it's become even more so true, more true now. We have made of this world a neighborhood, meaning the world has tended to get smaller and smaller and smaller. We know each other in different ways now. We've made of this world a neighborhood, and yet we have not made of it a brotherhood. Somehow and in some way, we have got to do this. We must all learn to live together as brothers, or we will all perish as fools. We are tied together in the single garment of destiny. We are tied together in the single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. Just feel that line, an inescapable network of mutuality. And then he says, for some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the way the universe is made. This is the way it is structured. So before we go into our session tonight, I'm going to invite you to think of someone that you disagree with. And maybe don't think of the person that is the most challenging person, but just to think of someone who might be on the other side from you. Someone who you know holds very different views than you do. And we're going to do a little exercise with that. We're going to call this little exercise Just Like Me. I invite you to close your eyes and to imagine the person you disagree with. Just like me, this person was once a helpless infant, loved or not loved well by their parents. Just like me, this person was expected to conform to their culture and to maybe become someone that they were not. Just like me, this person has felt deep sadness and pain, loss and loneliness. Just like me, this person doubts themselves and wonders if they are loved. Just like me, this person often feels alone. Just like me, this person has hurt others, whether unintentionally or intentionally. Just like me, this person has sometimes been thoughtless and self-centered. Just like me, this person wants happiness, safety, and security for themselves and the ones they love. Just like me, this person fears for the future. Just like me, this person is trying to find their way. Just like me, this person is doing the best they can. This practice that we are engaged in together, this session, is about continuing to break down the walls between us and them. As we practice with being in love, as we practice being love, remember that when we practice experiencing love, that this love is for all beings, not just the ones that we think deserve it. That's not how love works. We practice being in love with all beings equally. I invite us now to all take a deep breath in. And as you let it out, begin to let go of all of your thoughts, all of your wonderings, all of your concerns. And just let yourself drop into here and now. And then taking another deep breath in. And as we let this one out, imagine that you become a drop of love falling into an ocean of love. Here and now. And then simply notice whatever it is that you're experiencing. We now practice receiving love. We begin with the physical being, the body. And we imagine love flowing into our body, beginning with our feet and our legs. Allowing love to flow into our hips, our pelvis, our belly. Letting love flow into our chest, our shoulders, our arms, and our hands. Letting love flow into our back, starting all the way down at the tailbone, moving up the spine, including all the back and the neck. Letting love fill our head, coming to rest on our face. Feeling our whole entire body filled with love. And then letting love fill our emotional center, our heart. Just observing as love flows into this part of you, how your heart responds. Without expectation, just noticing what happens as you open your heart to the flow of love. Letting love flow into that part of you that is spirit, your aliveness, the part of you that is energy and flow. And then letting love flow into your mind. Instead of imagining that your mind is contained in the head and that love will fill the mind, let love expand your mind. Imagining that there's no limit to our mind. And that when love flows in, it makes room for all possibility. And now experiencing yourself as one whole being. Feeling yourself as body, heart, spirit, mind. This being that is you here now, filled with love. From your own being, reach out into the world to all being. And we're not going to touch the rest of the world with our love. We're going to recognize that love fills all being. We don't do the loving, we become one with love. And see if you can allow yourself to relax into that, to let that love hold you and all being. So remaining connected with your own being, remaining in this state of holding. Become aware of your breath and simply observe the natural flow of the breath, seeing what it is that you notice as the breath flows in and back out again. And I invite you to just deeply sink into this natural flow in which the body is always engaged of receiving. It's something that is sometimes so hard for us to receive, to allow things, experiences to come into ourselves. And then to not hang on to anything, but to let it flow out again. Trusting that the flow will continue, the next breath will come. And as you deepen into that trust, perhaps coming to a point at which you feel ready to completely let go, to not need to hang on to anything. And so just following that out breath into a space of complete surrender and a resting without thought in a space of simple being in love. As you go about these coming days, I invite you to remember that we are building a brotherhood, that we live together as sisters and brothers, that we're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, and that network is rooted in love. That I can't be who I ought to be until you are who you ought to be. You can't be who you ought to be until I am who I ought to be. And may we look at one another through the eyes of the words just like me. Thank you so much for practicing with me and supporting my own practice. I love you all.